This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's the second in our series of Las Vegas lead up to CBC episodes. And for this one, I am in the north side of Las Vegas, sitting across from Dave Pascual, head brewer, director of ops for Big Dogs Brewing, one of the winningest brewers, not only in Las Vegas, but maybe the entire state of Nevada. And I'm over your career, a lot of wins. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Big Dogs over the last number of years. In 2022, won a bronze for Las Vegas Lager at GABF, gold for Naughty Dog in 2019, bronze for a Goza in 2019, gold for a Tripel in 2017, gold for Red Hydrant English-style brown in 2015. I mean, silver for it in 20. I mean, there's just all these medals. And then World Beer Cup, of course, 2023 bronze for another wooden barrel aged strong ale. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of medals here, Dave.
Yeah, it's been fun. I won't lie.
Yeah. But what I also love about Big Dogs is that you also play in classic styles as well as some more contemporary iterations, and kind of spanning those things, and making a winning tradition out of something like Red Hydrant English style brown ale.
Yeah, I know. It's the history of Big Dogs has been. We had a lot of award-winning brewers come before. Sure. So it just wanted to keep that going.
You got a reputation to live up to.
Had some boots to fill, I guess.
Sure. Well, you've done it. You've done it well. And of course, you have a winning tradition that came from the place you brewed. Before this, we'll talk about that when we get into that history. But we're going to dig in, since obviously this is the lead up to Las Vegas CBC and World Beer Cup here in Las Vegas. So much pressure. But these episodes are to give those brewers listening out there something to get excited for and beers to check out while they're here in town. And that's why I'm here in advance talking to you and a couple others. We're going to dig into your approach to some of these classic as well as more progressive styles in a minute. But before we do that, at G&D Chillers, they always strive to build great chillers. Partner with them as you build great beer, but don't just take my word for it.
Hey, this is Josh Erickson of Jafuncta Brewing in Mandeville, Louisiana. The team at G&D were a critical part of our 10X expansion, always just a phone call or email away. And thanks to their superior equipment, technology, and documentation, commissioning our new chiller was smooth and straightforward. Now we can't wait until we need to upgrade our existing chiller.
That's right. Choose G&D Chillers on your next expansion or brewery startup and receive 1 free year of remote control and monitoring of your new G&D chiller. And ProBrew is changing the game at this year's CBC in Las Vegas. As part of ProMock Craft Beer Solutions, they're presenting a holistic approach to craft brewing operations. Through their display of animations, holograms, and machinery, they'll be highlighting how they can advance every aspect of your production line. Visit go.probrew.com/CBC24 or contact them at contactus@probrew.com to schedule one-on-one time with one of their subject matter experts at booth 1783 at this year's show. ProBrew, brew your beer. Also, are you struggling to source affordable citrus ingredients due to market fluctuations? Try Old Orchard's flavored craft juice concentrate blends, which mimic straight concentrates at a better price point and with a more reliable supply. Old Orchard's citrus-flavored blends include blood orange, grapefruit, lemonade, lime, and tangerine. To learn more and request your free samples, head on over to oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Dave, we kick things off with a little bit of background. You've got a pretty good one here.
Yeah.
What got you into brewing?
What got me into brewing? Okay, so I did go to high school here. I went to UNLV as well. While I was at UNLV, getting my degree in biology and chemistry, I came across a brewer that taught a class. He taught an upper division course at the time of worldly beers, basically. So taking his class, any college kid, right, drinks beer in college. So it was an interest to me, and I needed it for credit anyways. So I was like, all right, let's go try it out. So take the class. It was my junior into senior year, and I ended up getting the highest grade in there. I love beer that much, I guess, right? So we homebrewed in there.
You applied yourself.
Applied myself,
Hey.
yeah. So did that route, got the highest grade. The professor, like I said, was a local brewer in town. So he ran a brewery here, Barley's. His name is Michael Ferguson. But he got me in the brewing industry. He convinced me to take an internship, an unpaid internship, which, I didn't realize
great.
what he was getting me into at that moment. But so I had to actually write.
College professors always taking advantage of free labor.
Free labor, and that's something I could use here. He got me in, so I started working under him, and I had to basically write the dean of the college, like, hey, I'm doing something that's related to science, biology and chemistry, microbiology. So I wrote this like 2-page, basically an essay to him. Hey, this is why I should get credit for this. They allowed it, and I started working under him.
So you got to pay the school for a credit.
Yes, exactly.
And then work for free. Yeah, because that's how that scam works.
Yeah, so I got in there, and at first I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. Easy job, no problem. Thank goodness I was like fit. I was working out, but the amount of work that he put me up to, it was interesting. I even wanted to continue to do this.
Sure.
So yeah, getting in the lauter ton, cleaning it out, he would say he gets in all the time. And, I don't, hopefully he's not listening to this, but, I was thinking like, there's no way a 6'4" man of your size could fit into these areas. So he had me do those type of work and cleanups and things like that. But that's basically how I got in the industry. So I learned a lot from that, but I also, gained a respect, I guess, right, for what it is. And, once I transitioned from, I guess, that internship, I graduated. I was supposed to go into the medical field. I guess that's a typical thing for an Asian guy, right, to go in the medical field. So
you're not the first brewer this over the last 6 weeks who, in fact, Kelly McKnight from New Belgium was going to pre-med, at Harvard.
Oh,
and
wow.
Left pre-med at Harvard to become a brewer.
And I think that's what it takes, right? You got to have like that certain mentality and intelligence maybe to even balance everying that we do. So
I'm going to work just as hard and make a tenth of the money.
I was just going to say a lot less. But no, yeah. So an opportunity came at Chicago Brewing Company after I graduated, and I was like, what? Let me just take a year off. Let me see where this goes.
Sure.
It is very interesting. My mom was like, okay, questioning it just a little bit. But no, I took that year off, and now it's been almost 20 years. But that's how I got started. I took the job at Chicago Brewing Company, worked my way up as head brewer, and ran that spot for over 10 years before I came over to Big Dogs about 9 years ago.
I won a few medals over at Chicago Brewing in the process, and then came in here to Big Dogs, which also had a strong history of crushing those medals and and making great iterations of classic styles.
Yeah.
So 9 years now at the helm of Big Dogs. What's that story been like? And what have you where have things gone? How have things moved over that last 9 years of Big Dogs?
I think a lot has progressed. One reason why I came over here, and I'm really appreciative, is that the family has been, the owners. They're still the original owners. Still
the same family.
Still the same family.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kurt, he kind of runs it. The son of the original owner. But yeah,
because this Big Dogs it started as Holy Cow Brewery, right?
Yeah,
back in the 90s,
on the strip.
On the strip.
Then, it was the first brewery on the strip.
I remember going to Holy Cow way back in the day, probably 1995, maybe 1996.
Wow.
On the strip. I had just turned 21 in 1995 and was already drinking craft beer back there. And in fact, I should own up to this. Before we, as we were emailing about this, I shared a photo with you. I've got a photo of me with a Jamaican ska singer, ska rocksteady reggae singer Laurel Aiken, where I'm wearing my Holy Cow t-shirt because I used to love that t-shirt. I wore it all the time.
I wish you still had it.
I know, but I have the picture of me and Lauren Aiken. Rest in peace, Laurel Aiken. as we were doing a cover shoot for my old ska magazine with Laurel. It's so fun to think back and look at that, because I remember. I mean, it was a strange brewery. There was a lot of bright lights. Obviously, gaming was a big part of it. It was unusual for a craft brewery at the time.
Yeah.
But fun, and obviously I was already in that seeking out craft.
Yeah,
beer
I wish
mode
I
there.
was. I wish I was old enough to be able to partake in it back then.
Now I'm dating myself, Dave. And so anyway, eventually moved out off of the Strip, moved up here to the north side of town, and was renamed Big Dogs in honor of the original founder.
Yeah, Kurt's dad. Yeah, Tom Wiesner. Yeah, he passed away of leukemia, and so when they moved the operations here in the early 2000s, they decided to rename it in honor of his nickname, which is the Big Dog.
Cool.
So that's the history of the name right there.
So you take the helm, the brewing helm here, and obviously there's high expectations for you because you've made some really great beer at Chicago Brewing, and how did but there's also expectations for the beers that they're already known for. What did you walking in here? How have you helped guide and shape the beer program over the last 9 years?
I think what's great is that everyone in the beer community here in Vegas are actually really good friends. So the brewer previously here was a good friend of mine, so he kind of segued me into jumping into here. But it's every brewery is different. I'm sure many people who've jumped from brewery to brewery will notice that. But what I imparted here, I just hope it was just my spin and just more of a mentality of just making sure. Again, this is all, just my personal take of how I view things. But, having that science background kind of helps, at least lay the foundation of what's important, when it comes to brewing. So making sure things are just cleaned as possible, as much as possible, to making sure all steps and processes are just followed through. So it was interesting because, remember, I came from a smaller brewery. I probably only had like one employee. So it was good to see growth in myself, but also just what I had to do here. So when I first started here at the brewery, it wasn't production wise wasn't as big as it's now. So we're a pub at heart, but we're also that pubduction, I guess, if you want to call it a pub / production. So seeing that growth, that's kind of what I've imparted or imprinted here at Big Dogs, was getting us to that next level.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons why I think it's taking a little longer than other places, probably. The economy, the state of the economy, and how things are going now is probably slowing it down. But we just have a little bit more antiquated laws and things like that kind of slow things down here. So but no, as for what I think I've done here, I think I've just trying to build a culture with my teammates here, and beer has always been the forefront. And when they brought me on here, Kurt Wiesner, he basically just gave the keys and said, "Hey, we trust you." I've known him before I even came here.
Sure.
And I've hopefully built a great reputation with people in this town and the brewing industry. And that's just kind of where we're going and heading at that. I'd like to give you a lot of answers on this, but we're still figuring it out. So, we're at that cusp, I think, where, we're making that jump, and the company's invested in certain things, our canning line, expansions and things. But, we're still working with the shoebox, and, we're at max capacity of where I think we could be. We have a little bit of room for growth, but, I'll let you know more as that happens in the near future, hopefully.
For sure. We can talk about what you're brewing on and how much you're brewing here in a minute. Before we do that, streamline efficiency with Omega Yeast's Diacetyl Knockout series. The DKO series is comprised of 8 familiar yeast strains engineered to knock out the formation of diacetyl before it starts. The strains now better, available now for made-to-order pitchables at any volume. Contact Omega Yeast today at omegayeast.com. Also, ABS Commercial has been a full-service brewery outfitter for over 10 years. They're proud to offer brewhouses, tanks, keg washers, and preventative maintenance parts to brewers across the country, as well as equipment for distilling, cider making, wine making, and more. They know the ins and outs of the brewing and installation process and can design the perfect setup for you, whether you're just starting out or looking to expand. Contact them today at sales@abs-commercial.com to discuss your customized brewery needs. ABS Commercial, we are brewers. And if you're a brewer who's also interested in distilling, subscribe now to the Craft Spirits and Distilling podcast, available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, hosted by Sydney Jones, head distiller for Few Spirits in Chicago, and Molly Troop, master distiller for Freeland Spirits in Portland, Oregon. This podcast explores the technical and creative processes behind great spirits through conversations with some of the leading distillers working today. It's everything you love about the Craft Beer and Brewing podcast, but focused on distilling. Click on the link in the show notes and give it a listen. All right, Dave. So you've got a small brew house back there that was primarily designed to make beer for the pub here.
Yeah.
And now also is doing some production as well. How much beer do you produce every year? Tell me about the system.
Well, it's just a 15-barrel brew house. So we're kicking out beers. We have some 60-barrel tanks that we high gravity into. Our biggest selling beer.
High gravity is a theme down here.
Yeah.
Last week, Matt was talking about Able Baker was talking about high gravity brewing out of their 15 and pushing 23 barrels out of that.
So the big plus about our system, which is shocking, it was a system from the late 90s. It's a JV Northwest system, but the mash tun was really oversized. So that worked out great for us because back then, brewing, people weren't producing mashes, of that volume and poundage. But yeah, I mean, again, I only look at what I know experience-wise in my brewery.
Someone just wanted a thin mash bed for their lagers or something like that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but it worked out great for us. I get full yields even when we do barley wines, things like that. So last brewery I was at, we couldn't do things like that. We can only fit, 1,000 pounds in a 15-barrel mash. So yeah, all interesting. Yeah.
So you're pushing how many barrels a year do you?
I think we're projected right now to do over 3,200, 3,300 right now. I know during COVID or right before COVID, we were skirting those numbers too. So, but yeah, we built back up on that. I'm sure everyone feels the same way. COVID kind of set things back,
Sure.
Not just in production, but, many other things. Contract hops are one of them.
So what do you brew the most of?
Most of is our lager.
Yeah.
So we do our Las Vegas lager, the one that we took a medal, luckily enough to take a medal with at JBF in 22. But yeah, that's our biggest
This is American
production.
light lager style?
Yeah, it's a contemporary American style lager.
Okay.
So, it's just simple 2-row and, we use a little bit of corn in there. And, but yeah, how we approach that and what we do and what we're looking for profile wise, I think we hit it pretty good on the mark. And, one beer you always hear from brewers or anyone else. It's always harder to hide, the details, whether they're good or bad in a beer, But that beer was pretty fun just because, in the namesake, Las Vegas lager.
It's got a good brand behind it.
Has a great name behind it. But that's our biggest production beer.
Yeah.
We do kick out a lot of that. It takes up all our 60-barrel tanks basically, and we rotate in and out of that every time.
That's a big volume beer to make out of a pretty small, tight brew house.
Yeah, and it's rotating that, and it's a lager, so we still traditionally keep it as a lager. 3-4 weeks is what we do with it. But yeah, it's not an ale. That's one thing, you try to squeeze out as much as you can, but 2-week turnarounds would obviously be a lot better than a 4-week turnaround.
Yes, they would.
So yeah, that's just kind of where we're at. We're pushing the production here.
So why 2-row, versus, kind of Pilsner malt and a light lager?
Well, we've tried it too. I know cost is also one thing as well, but profile wise, it's very drinkable. It is your American lager with just a little more oomph to it.
Yeah.
We use a little touch more hops in it. We still do noble hops as well. But yeah, simplicity was what we were looking for in this beer. And it's grown too, because I know we've added and done a little things to it, but I think as brewers, we're always trying to perfect or be better. You can never be complacent, right? So that's kind of how I approach everything.
For example, what are some of the kind of process or ingredient tweaks that you've made to that lager that you found have made an impact?
Well, yeast strains, we've switched different yeast strains through the years too as well. You can use a traditional American style. I know, we were getting a little bit more of that green apple, which is typical for that style. I personally like it a little bit more subdued, but, switching even to like a German style strain, a little cleaner as well. But hops were one thing that we had to really like dial in. You know, we were using American varieties at one point and wanted to keep it, hey, let's go something a little cleaner, floral, and you know, touch grassy. So we went back to noble hops using into that. So again, we do use a little bit more hops.
What noble hops do you favor on that? Because I mean,
personally,
right now we're in a weird time for noble hops.
It is. I mean, you can't even get
some of the climate change stuff.
Yeah, like middle fruit.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something that we tend to use actually a decent amount of. Is that so? Yeah. That's kind of what, you know, profile wise. Like I said, we're always trying, and like you said, like depending on what's available to us. So for a while, we couldn't even get it, you know, and we're lucky enough to actually get a contract. You know, it's little worrisome when your biggest production beer and you're struggling to find contracts for those ingredients, but I think we got lucked out here. In the next couple of years, we should be okay now. Okay, but yeah, that's just something, you know, simplicity, but balance. And for me, when I'm approaching a beer, you know, you got to try other people's beers. I mean, that's just what it is. You know, you got to emulate what you think out there is what profile wise everyone's trying to achieve. Yeah, for me, I'm trying beer all the time. I know it's to the point where, yes, I have to eat lunch or eat something just to make sure that I'm not getting too buzzed in the morning. That's just part of it. But yeah, anytime we're doing something, whether it's a different change or just constantly, just always trying the beer. So I'm probably the worst person because I'm so critical of myself, and not just in beer, by the way, but many things. And I think it carries over into what I do. But yeah, I'm either hyper focusing on one thing or I maybe just, I don't think I am, but you know, and that's why I balance it out with my other brewers. Just kind of thinking like, hey, am I actually getting this profile, or is it because I'm hyper focusing on these issues? So, but no, yeah, that's just kind of how I approach things all the time. So
sure. On something like a light lager, I imagine the IBU goal is going to be, you know, pretty small.
Yeah.
You know, what, 12 IBUs, 15 max.
Yeah, right around there.
And you know, and so that's a pretty light hop expression. It was interesting to, you know, for you to tell me that the hops, you know, were something, you know, that you particularly worked on, given that it's such a minimal expression there.
Yeah.
You know, how do you think about that kind of flavor contribution in such a light beer where, I mean, they're making incredibly small moves at that kind of point?
Yeah.
Those are going to be all hot side, you know, and there's no real aromatic.
Yeah, there's no dry hop, nothing like that.
No whirlpool on this one.
Yeah. No, actually we do a little. Yeah, we do a little. You know, we try to get as much out of it, you know, so we are hopping on the front end, in the middle. We're also adding some on the back end too as well. I mean, no dry hop in this, but
sure.
But yeah, no, we're just looking for
whirlpooling though.
Yeah, just a little bit. I know, maybe I'm telling too much now, but
this is what we do on the podcast.
Yeah.
We talk
so
about how you do.
Yeah, that's we're looking for a well-rounded profile.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, through the years we've tried things, done things, and even the old brewer Dave Otto before me, he even brought up one time coming here, it's like, oh, I noticed you have a little bit more hop character in here, and it's like, well, yeah, you picked it up. I mean, if you try it, you know it. So yeah.
Oh, maybe that's the little difference maker.
Yeah. You know what? Funny enough, I've talked to other brewers that have won medals and stuff, and they always say like, oh, it's just probably just because it's just a little bit more of this ingredient that stands out. I mean, I don't know how the judges judge, but something has to differentiate you from the others, right? So
it's a game of inches at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish I knew. I mean, I get that question like, oh, how did you win in this category? I don't know. You know, it's like I try to produce a beer that I think is stylistically to what, you know, the judges are looking for, or just even to the guidelines. That's just it, you know. And I think most of the time though, you know, most of us don't brew to a style. You know, we tend to brew a beer and then figure out, oh, it does fit this a little well, you know, it might do well in here. And, you know, I've had my fair share of stories on, you know, beers that have won medals, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want a medal for that. But
you want to brew for your audience first.
Yes,
for the people that are going to buy your beer, and you want to make the beer for them. And then you find the category that it fits into.
Yeah. That's what it is. Every year we're looking like, okay, I think this fits better in here.
Yeah.
A cream ale versus a blonde ale, you know, I think this one's better.
Oh man, I love that cream ale versus Mexican lager category. Like you see these beers, like, oh, all right. What you sell the beer to your customer, at versus what category you enter it into in a competition. It's always interesting
funny.
to see.
Yeah.
Anything else interesting about light lager?
No, I mean outside of being a fantastic beer.
What else do you brew a lot of?
A lot of here. We do our IPAs. We do a pale ale. That's one of our bigger sellers. But that red hydrant you brought up too, an English brown ale, that's one of our core beers that we do. That
core English brown ale.
I know.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's not a beer that any other brewers out there listening to this are going to be rushing to rip off from you. So you can share some of your techniques in brewing that with us, knowing that, it's anyway, when but this beer existed when you came into
before. Yeah.
So this was a legacy beer that you inherited and that you had to, also continue its legacy. Yeah. Talk to me about what it was, and then how that, how that has massaged over time.
So, one of the first brewers was Dan Rogers, and he brewed this beer originally before. So this is, you're talking about in the early 90s.
Brewers ago.
Yeah. And then he was here for a good amount of time, and then Dave Otto came on after him. And so that was one thing when he came on board, or when I came on board, he just took a medal for it, took a gold medal for it, and it was pretty awesome. And then I took over, and then one thing he was telling me is like, Pascual, that beer has not changed since I've been brewing it. And it's been similar recipe-wise since Dan Rogers was here. So that was like, oh, well, if it ain't broke, why change it? Almost kind of a mentality on that. But through the years, everything changes, right? Like ingredients, agriculture, so many things affect profiles and how things taste. But on the most part, that's basically a very similar recipe from when it was originally brewed. So that's kind of cool to have that, and to see through the years how it's progressively continued to do really well at competitions, but also more importantly, how well it does across our pub here or even out in market. It's a classic style beer. Not many people seem to gravitate toward it, but it's held its own in the past few years. So yeah, it's just a fantastic style of beer if you're looking for something like that. You can
do well with it because other people aren't, it fits that one thing that,
a little niche almost,
and there are folks that love brown ales, and,
That's what got me in the brewing industry.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I mean, it was like hefts and brown ales, that was me drinking in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So.
Yeah. Well, how do you approach brown ale? How do you, start building how do you build this recipe? For brown ale?
Well, darker beers for me, like even this rolls over into like, even when you brew like Belgian beers or, like a Belgian de Bell or, a dark strong or whatnot. Characteristically, it's just finding a multitude of ingredients that can impart characters that you're looking for. I know that sounds very simple, but a lot of it's based on me just trying and tasting, and that's why I said like I'm always trying and tasting a beer. But yeah, profile wise, at least when it comes to like building a malt profile, we're looking at different varieties of caramalts. We're looking at also what's going to give us a little bit more like toast or biscuit. Obviously, biscuit malt will do that, a touch of chocolate, touch of roast, just finding the right amounts of those. And when I came here, we were using, all the ingredients are basically the same in the red hydrant that we produce, but amounts have maybe changed just subtly. Whether, our supplier no longer carries this, product anymore. Sure. Oh, we have to order from this person, but now we have to order pallets from them. But on the most part, like when you look at like ingredients and how everything is like come together, it's basically been the same. So, but yeah, brown ales, finish a touch sweet, I think helps this too as well. Using some of those darker roast malts as well, like helps build up some characteristics in there. But yeah, like a variance in like caramalts also. So it's not just one caramalt we're using several different ones that are helping to build that rounded profile that you look in that malt profile that we're looking for.
Yeah, are there some that you really enjoy in there?
Ingredient wise, just trying
and
to
these are probably a couple of percentage of each of these within a kind of a broader.
Yeah, I mean, malt wise, I'm trying to think. Yeah, we do percentages of, like I said, dark malts, like whether it's roast or touch chocolate in there, just to give it a little bit more oomph to it. But mostly, yeah, just a variance in caramel malts, like ranging from 30 up to 70 or 80. We're using different amounts of those to kind of impart those characters. But,
yeah. And then just a standard 2-row base for this, I imagine.
2-row, yeah.
I imagine if you're using 2-row in your light lager, that it's probably your base across
everything. We save the good stuff for other beers too as well. So,
is there a 2-row that you really love?
2-row?
Is there a base malt that you?
Yeah, base malt, like, I love Pilsner. I love using that in beers, but, we use that in certain beers. But no, 2-row, we've used raw, we've used country malts also as well. But no, yeah, it's been, again, traversing the market now and like contracting your 2-row. That's always been interesting too. Just trying to figure out what's going to work best for us cost wise too. So, but no, yeah, right now we're currently with country malt. So yeah, we're using 2-row through them, and it's been fantastic. I have no qualms about it, and making some great beers with it. So yeah.
Nice. Well, let's pivot and talk about some of the Belgian-style beers that you really love brewing, and then maybe even Goza, because you've won a medal for that one too recently. Yeah. And these feel like some of your brewing projects that we might be able to. That maybe I can squeeze and get more details,
more specific
in some way or another. Maybe somehow I'm going to keep trying on that one.
Yeah.
Before we do that, this episode is sponsored by Yakima Chief Hops as a global preferred supplier of NZ hops. Yakima Chief is the source for the pronounced, bright, and tropical aromas New Zealand hops are known for, adding a rush of exotic fruits and zesty citrus to your recipes. Used on their own or in conjunction with your favorite American varieties, NZ Hops brands are an excellent tool for exceptional brews. NZ Cryo is now available through Yakima Chief Hops. Learn more at yakimachief.com. Also, if you're opening or expanding a brewery, getting your building right is one of the most important things you'll ever do. The architects at OPA Design Studio are your partners in developing the unique design you need. With over a decade of experience designing breweries, the folks at OPA are here to serve as your trusted experts from start to finish with their full range of architectural services. Visit designopa.com to set up your no-obligation introductory consultation today. All right, we're going to get into this, Dave. I'm going to find some way, somehow.
It's my sweat.
But maybe let's talk about, Tripel. Triple Dog Dare. That's a beer. Is that one of yours? Is that one that predated you?
Well, I was also brewing a similar beer at Chicago Brewing Company.
Oh, so that's one you brought with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So
not name. I mean, it's totally different name, but yeah, I brought some of the experiences that I had with that.
Of course. Your philosophy towards brewing Belgian-style beers. So talk to me about designing that beer.
What
was your inspiration? It was interesting. When you head to Belgium, like Tripel is everywhere. Like it's that standard beer. I did not. It's pretty amazing just how that's the beer that everybody drinks.
It's okay.
And there are lots of different approaches, and iterations to it.
Yes,
it's a much more diverse style as a whole than we might think of it here.
Yeah. So again, this is just my personal take. Everything.
That's all any of these ever are.
Opinions. How I approach it, and but beer wise, you want to use traditional ingredients as much as you can. Use a lot of Pilsner malt in them. But no, I think again,
you start writing the recipe. Where do you start writing the recipe?
When do I start writing?
Where do you start when you're writing the recipe for this?
Well, I kind of keep, I found a sweet spot and I kind of kept with it, but, no, just making sure that you're using Pilsner malt as a good base.
Sure.
Pilsner is a good base. We use some wheat malt in there too as well. But
what does the wheat impart?
Well, it helps with some of the body too, like
Sure.
some of the head retention.
It's true. You got to have good foam on a triple.
So using that as a good base, simplicity always takes you so much further. The yeast does a lot of the work for you. And, I've used yeast from whether it's White Labs, Y yeast, even Lallemand Abbey Ale, those are solid yeasts that you could use. But profile wise, I'm always trying to just, again, my personal take is that I like the fruit notes. I like the banana notes that are in there. Like the spicy clove, I do like that. I like it personally a little bit more subdued. So we're trying to make sure that we're getting like those nice banana. You get even sometimes like that pear kind of character that you can get in there. But that's what I want to showcase more of. And again, all traditional ingredients. We try to use as much pilsner malt. We use
right. Obviously, fermentation is going to feed into some of that expression, but also but malt and hops. That creating some of these other kind of precursors for that fermentation to also work on as a piece of that too. How do you balance those things? Are there any ingredient considerations that you make knowing that it's going to express differently, through the fermentation process?
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest ones are like the temperature control, at least for us when we're using it in the fermenter and setting our temp there. So, I know some people free rise, they let it, when they knock out whatever their temp is, they kind of let it go up. What I don't like happening is, and it's kind of burned me a couple times, is that I wouldn't say I start off as high as possible, but I'll leave it at a certain temp, like say 78, and then eventually control it and then let it free rise. So again, that's just what I do, and it's worked in the past. I've had issues where, the glycol basically turned on too soon or something, and it stopped the fermentation, so it stalled it out. But no, yeah, it's just not making sure the temps aren't going too high are very important for me, because I've been to Belgium. I've tried triples over there and, all kinds of beers, and it was really fun. It was my last hurrah before my wife said, we're having a kid, you got one last chance to do something. So I did it, and I decided to go to Belgium. So
good choice.
Yeah, beer wise, some of the best beers, produced there are just very drinkable. So that's what I tried to emulate. So when I first started brewing Belgian beers was at Chicago Brewing Company. And the old brewer there, for instance, and, to save costs, would just not use traditional inverted sugar or, Belgian candy sugar. Right. And I've always noticed it was just slightly different. I know that stresses out the yeast a little bit, and maybe not in good ways, but I decided just like, there was other things he did, and I'm not going to, go into it, but I was more interested in making it a classic style, because I've tried other ones. I've tried bottles, from Belgium, and it just characteristically, it wasn't there for me. So I just trying to hone that in, and from my personal take. And it's so interesting to me how profiles and, subtleties and how the brain processes it. It's so different across different people. But for me and what I looked for, it's just easy drinking, not high alcohol notes, and you keep those hidden. Sure. I mean, our triple here, even the one that won the medal was hovering around 10%, but it drank like a 6% beer. But yeah, that those little tricks or things that you could do to minimize some of those characteristics that I think that type of expression, I think was definitely something you want to avoid, especially the alcohol. But that was something I was working really hard to do. And I think, like I said, we haven't really changed it much in the past few years, making sure that. Yeah.
So what is that key to, controlling? Obviously, temperature, as you mentioned, is a piece of this. Is there, a pitch rate question on that? Because the stress, obviously, with these yeasts will, create characters in different kinds of ways. Is there something to the, fermenter geometry in the, because obviously with these yeasts that can also impact things. Head pressure can impact things. What are some, are there some of these other things that you use to control that kind of, higher alcohol expression?
Yeah, no, most of it has honestly been temperature control. No. I think that's a big part of it. As for pitch rates, we pitch exactly what it is. I've been burned before again on, hey, let's see if we can get more esters out of this, even on a hef, surprisingly. But no, we make sure that we're pitching proper amounts in each one of our batches here. The biggest thing is also trying to find out, hey, what kind of variables can we control, right? Minimize your variables. So knowing that we put the proper pitch rate in there is one less thing that we have to consider when we're trying to figure out, hey, what went wrong in this batch, And mind you, when I say things go wrong, it's not, oh, it's undrinkable. No, it's just like subtleties that I personally think shouldn't be there, or
this one is good, but might not be our competition batch.
Yeah. I admit that. Funny story. We had a conversation once, and maybe this is the platform to at least put your feather in your cap kind of thing. But no way am I bragging. But one year we took a bronze at GABF, and I was talking to one of my brewers, Amanda. She now runs another brewery in town. But I was like, hey, this beer is, the following year after we won the medal, it's like, this beer is really good. I'm telling you, it's hitting the marks. It's even better than the year previous. And then sure enough, JBF, we were honored with receiving a gold that year for that. So, those little subtle changes, I think, as brewers, we have to be honest with ourselves, right? That's why you try beers, not, you're comparing yourself. That's just what it is. Comparing where that beer is, your beer, other people's beers. You got to do that at some point, because, no one's going to tell you, at least some people won't tell you to your face if you're doing something wrong. So, you got to get yourself out there and drink more beer. And that's something I admit I need to do more of, is try more people's beers, And that's, having a kid, and that doesn't help,
Sure. That's one of the nice things about my job. I get to go meet up with people, drink their beers, and try a lot of these beers. But no, I know what you're saying there, and I think there is you can decry the competition, but there's something to the friendly competition, and also understanding. Because beer doesn't exist in a vacuum. Everyone drinking beer has context, and the context can change. Obviously, the context of drinking, triple in Belgium is a little different than the context of drinking triple here in the United States. But, having said that, anyone who's ordering that they have these past experiences that come in and weigh in that, and it's good to think about what those are. While at the same time, as you mentioned, ingredients keep changing year after year. Your beers, if you want them to hit the same way, also people's palates change year after year. You think about our palates are all influenced by the food and drink that we consume, and that's going to be different depending on where you are in the country or around the world. And but then all of a sudden, we start drinking, roastier and roastier coffee, and it changes our threshold for, for what roasty really is. And those things do change. Our palates change just like the ingredients change. And so for beers to hit the same way, some of those have to, kind of grow and evolve too.
Yes. And that's the challenge, right? When it comes to brewing, it's never be complacent and just keep pushing forward and trying to make anything better. And I've, beers that we, again, taken medals with, I changed them. It's does it mean this year it's going to be any different? And, I've looked at even barley wines that, we took medal in 19 for that. It's changed as well. We, like you said, we weren't hitting certain profiles that we were getting previously. So we try to figure out, okay, what did we do? Let's, we do some extensive notes, but, looking back on certain things, like how we are able to get those characters, or at least squeeze more out of it to get those characters that we know were very, poignant, or just what we feel put us over the edge. Because, at JBF, the good thing about it is that you can try other people's beers, right? Because you're on the fest floor. You can say, I'm the guy that, hey, I see a guy want a medal, or a brewery want a medal, or whoever won the medal, and go right in that line. I don't care. I got to get better at it, though, because I'm not as good as, Matt Marino did it at Able. But he's can easily just walk behind and skip the line kind of thing. And it's like, oh man, I guess if I had a medal, that would make it look much easier to do.
You gotta put that around your neck before.
Here's my credentials right here. Right. Can I try one of your beers, please?
Well, tell me about that with Naughty Dog. The barley wine that you're talking about. I've had a similar conversation a year or two ago with Hutch and Jonathan from Cannonball Creek, talking about pale
Those
ale.
guys kill it all the time.
Pale ale and IPA. Exactly. They kill it. They, they win a lot of medals. But they also were like, we won a medal and then we went back and changed the recipe to make it more like what we want to. And that's a bold thing to go do.
It is.
Now that you've already like set a standard for this, So with something like barley wine, what was your process then of tasting and thinking, I think the next iteration of this should highlight, this a little bit more, and this is how we want to shift that.
Yeah.
How do you go about deciding what to change and how to change it?
Well, the only way you can do it is if you have data, right? So our data was just, hey, let's brew this beer again and see, try to mimic as much as we can. Well,
Right.
as we realized, like, certain things were obviously different. And it's like, again, profile wise was hitting, but it wasn't hitting as much as we'd like in certain areas. So, we went back to the drawing board and just looked at ingredients, looked at, barrels that we were using. We're a smaller brewery, for Vegas, we're one of the bigger ones, but, overall, and space wise is always something we have to figure out. So storing barrels was a whole nother thing. So we even considered where we position it to, how long is it sitting in this area here? How high is it? How much moisture is in our room? So, we try thinking and controlling as much of the variables again as what we can, what we can do. But yeah, no, it was ingredients. I think some of the ingredients that we used, we substituted. We didn't have them available to us at the time. So when we did the brew set, that was a big change, I think, from us from one year to the next.
I guess, 2019 into 2020 would have been a time where
there
were some certain ingredient constraints in 2020.
Okay, we can't get that right now. All right, but even in your mistakes, you learn so much, right? Or I wouldn't even consider it a mistake. It was just trying something different, right? And seeing what it is and just knowing in your mind, how do you categorize that? So, we tried different yeast strains. We got back and, what we produce now is, I think, on par with what we did in 19. And we did it too, not too long ago. What was it, 21? That was also the same. But yeah, it's just, taking good notes and looking at what you're doing and trying it. That's the only thing I could say is like trying as that progress. We realized too, like just for a little trick, and I don't know if other people do it, but we have better results if we barrel age through the winter, versus summer. And, it would make sense here with the heat and how arid it is here. But that works out better for us too as well. And then finding that sweet spot, certain beers, we do 3 months, certain beers we do a little bit more. Beers, wine barrels, you name it, like so many different, variables, but it's all about us just remembering, note taking, profiling it, like, hey, this is what we like. And with me, I'm very, I talk with my crew. It's not, everything's not internal, at least when it comes to like, ideology, or at least how we want to approach something. It's more like, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you guys think? And then they throw their 2 cents in as well. So, I'm not the only one here, and these guys are fantastic, and, they help me out with a lot of things as well. So yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
That sounds to me like a kind of a shorter barrel residence time for a barrel-aged barley wine.
Yeah.
Which brings its own design constraints, obviously. Like, I've talked in the past to, Marty and Jim at Revolution, and they, have some very high gravity, into barrel, 20 Plato, kind of very sweet stock that's built to last, for a couple of years of barrel aging. And, obviously if your goal is barrel aging for 3 to 6 months, now you probably need a leaner beer, and it's not simply, you're not just simply, blending stock out of that. But talk to me about how you approach that. Is that you make a single stream beer then that goes, into barrels?
Yeah.
And then how do you think about, the way that gravity, time, and the barrel interact with each other?
Yeah. When we brew beers here, it's normally just a single batch when it comes to barrel aging, unless we're doing a big program.
Barrel-aged barley wine is not a big thing for anyone.
No.
Especially not, for big dogs.
Even doing a 15 barrel of that. Yeah, that's a decent amount.
Sure. Revolution, they put it in cans. They, they have a pretty good market now for these barrel-aged beers, and they have some flexibility in how they do things comparatively.
I think there's definitely a market for it. But no, the way we look at it and how we approach it, I'm trying to think here. Because we've had barrel aged some of those beers. So that funny one, the one that won the medal at World Beer Cup last year, that was technically a barley wine.
Yeah.
But it was a 9-year-old barley wine.
9 years old.
So, again, it's just...
You entered a 9-year-old barley wine?
Yeah.
And won a bronze medal.
And won a bronze medal in the
World Beer Cup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know.
How do you even have, was that 9 years, was it packaged and sat in a bottle for that long?
No, it was in a can. It was in a keg can.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it sitting in a keg, and sometimes we pull beers. That's just how it is. We have beers and we're deciding what to do with it, and it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So, but yeah,
so you just find this magical keg that's been sitting cold.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so funny. There's a story. Okay, one of my guys, Marshall, was we were clearing out stock, so we just built out a cooler, which should be 3 times bigger, but we're running tight on space. So he was clearing out some old stock of beer that we were like, oh, we'll blend it, we'll do this, like we had old barrel aged beers, and we're like, okay, let's just start clearing out. There's just no way we can store these, extra kegs of beer. So unfortunately, he started getting rid of them. I walked by him when he was happening to be like dumping it on the ground, basically. I'm like, hold on, what is that? And I look at it, the tag is worn off, and I was like, that smells fantastic. So I grab a cup, start drinking it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really good. We should hold on to this just a little bit longer. So we were going to release it for, like opening up our new bar in our barn area or something like that. And then we were just like trying it. I'm like, oh my God, this beer is really good. It'd be really interesting if we turn this into competition and see how well it does. And I was so shocked that this beer did anything, but hey, you never know, right? If you never turn something in. But profile-wise, again, it was very consistent.
Extended lagering in a cold conditioning for 9 years in a keg.
And that one, I'm pretty sure,
it had been barrel aged.
Yeah, we barrel aged that that one was like right around 6 months, because it was right when I came on Big Dogs around then. But that beer was fantastic. And it was very similar to the 19 beer that we happened to win a medal with too as well. So characteristically it worked out, and it was fun to see that one actually win. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. How does a beer that old, sitting just in a cooler maturate? And it seemed to have maturated really well. I mean, took a medal with it. So yeah.
That's crazy. Of course, now you can't repeat that.
No,
there's no brewery that's gonna be like, we're going to just age these kegs for 9 years.
Oh man,
your CFO.
Hopefully, we're still alive.
What are you doing with the cooperage for 9 years? You know how much that costs? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So it was fun. That one also, again, like I said, was very similar to the barley wine that we produce now. So and how we approach that. So different barrels in part. Certain characteristics. So we have a local distillery, it's a distillery in town, but they supply some of our barrels too as well. But just having good relationships with our barrel brokers, I'm always pushing, or when I do reach out, I'm like, how fresh are they? When were they emptied? Where are they coming from? So yeah, a lot of things play into. It's so weird to narrate this and like talk about it. These are things that just go on in my mind, and like. Whether or not, like I said, there's proof behind it or the data, or is this all just, just in my mind? But things like this, it tends to work out. So, yeah.
I mean, that's all any of this is different people's approaches and, the things they've learned. I mean, that's the interesting thing about brewing too, right? We could talk about process, ingredients, and everything else, but like if they're not brewing on your system and your brew house, like the different, results may vary.
Yeah, everyone has access to the same ingredients. It's just how you manipulate it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's
tough let me
to put
talk about
words.
I am still interested in like designing barley wine for a shorter aging period again, because a lot of the typical mainstream in that kind of barrel aging would be now the trend is longer aging. And even a year would be pretty minimal for some people. So 3 to 6 months It's a pretty rapid time, which means you're designing beer to pick that up fast.
We try. I mean, we're trying the barrels as they maturate. So that's one thing. You know, you're investing so much product into something.
How often do you sample those? Because the difference between 3 and 6 months can be, if that's your time frame.
Yeah, and barrels.
If your goal is 2 years, and it's like you're not going to taste them until you're at least a year, right?
Yeah, and some of the barrels, I mean, they're so different from each other. You know, you get characteristics. You're like, oh wow, this one still tastes like the wort, you know, or the base beer, you know, and then you have others that are like, wow, you know, the whiskey's really coming through. And then, you know, we've had beers that we've aged and they've actually cleaned up a little bit, you know. So for instance, you know, you get some of the acetone like notes that you can get in some barrels.
Sure.
We've had some of that kind of clean up, and then when you barrel blend them, you tend to not notice it. So it's just enough threshold to give it that, you know, that roundness, I guess, we're looking for when we're putting beers together, and at least where they want to finish at. We do go in a little bit sweeter. That tends to help out. You know, the simple explanation for that is that, you know, we're trying not to, you know, the tannins in the woods, you know, provide like that sucking on a popsicle, and it's like that little bit of drying action. So you need some of that sweetness to kind of counteract that. But yeah, outside of that, yeah, it's just a traditional barley wine that we try to keep as traditional as possible. So ingredient wise, we're not doing anything weird. You know, it's like we're still hitting the colors. We're, you know, the threshold of the color we're looking for. And one year, again, it was during COVID, but that was what I was telling you about. It's like we had substitute ingredients that we weren't able to get before, and we were overshot on some of our color a little bit just because we've never used some of that ingredient. Even though our calculations said it was going to be fine, it was slightly darker. Caramel is a big part of the barley wine that we look for. It's like a rich caramel character, and you know, everyone wants that in a barley wine, but that was one big thing that we try to really push when it comes to the finished product.
And so just like your brown ale, it's going to use a range of caramel malts.
Yeah, so darker, richer malts, you know, you want to utilize, and you know, a lot of what I'm comparing, like you know, you try other people's beers, but you don't know the recipe, right? But again, that's like kind of the basis of what I look at. It's like, wow, I really like what this brewery does. I really like what they do here. I like the profiles here. How can I emulate that? But yeah, there's, you know, for us, it's just what we try from year to year, and like where we see how things progress, and like what we liked of a certain characteristics if we had to substitute certain barrels. So that's another thing too, is that we keep a stock of barrels, and then we try to do another, whether it's bourbon or whiskey, whatever we're doing, and trying it in that as well. And then we can actually compare and see like, hey, you know, profile wise, what are we picking up here? We get more lactones out of this. Oh, we get more vanilla, you know, out of this one. So we've done that too, as well as just like kind of using different bourbon barrels and whiskey barrels to kind of see where it progresses to. So, but yeah, that's all we have is comparative data is what we generate here, and single batches. So
sure,
it's a little stressful when you're, you know, producing only like 6, you know, barrels of to age, and then that's all you have, and putting all your eggs in those baskets in hopes that, you know, something comes out great out of it. So
for sure. Well, looking at it from a big picture perspective, you hinted at it at the start, but I want to kind of come back around to it in terms of, you know, creating a culture of excellence and building a team, you know, that is all pushing towards that. What do you think are some of those kinds of key factors that continue, you know, to make you all successful? You know, not because it's, again, you're right, it's not just you, it's the entire team all pulling in the right direction. And, you know, what are some of those things, you know, that you know, you all focus on that, you know, push towards that idea of broader brewing excellence?
Well, you know, you have to have the team feel like a team. And I think that's a big push for me, is just making sure that everyone that's part of having their hand in it is, they also see the end result of it. You know, it's, you know, like you cleaning kegs, that's a very important part, you know, but communication is also another thing too. It's like, you know, just talking with the team. Like you said, I touched base with it earlier. It's like, it's not just my way or the highway kind of thing. I know that was a mentality with some of the brewers I've worked with in the past. And, but no, it's just being open. You know, I admit I don't know everything, you know, and I might forget something, that all happens. But, that communication with the team, just making sure like, hey, you guys are involved as much as I am, just because I'm technically your boss doesn't mean I have to be your boss, like in those aspects. But it's just making sure that they're included on decisions as well. Some things, yes, I have to make the decision on ultimately, but I still refer to them because I trust them, and I think that's a big part is like trusting your team. And I think it's worked out pretty good, hoping everyone here is happy. I'm happy still. So
Sure.
It's a big plus.
Well, since we've got a lot of brewers coming in town for CBC in a few weeks, trying to close this special mini series of Las Vegas episodes with your personal recommendations. What are some of your favorite beer things and favorite non-beer things to do in Las Vegas?
Oh man, well, there's more to the Vegas than the Strip. Hiking. I was telling you, but off the air, it's like going hiking. So we're probably going to do a hike this weekend. But yeah, it's like we're going to do the Springs hike. Hot Springs hike here.
Ooh,
but
nice.
The Red Rock Canyon's really beautiful too as well. A lot of mountain biking things that you could do. But in town, I'll be honest, I'm a little boring. I like to do outdoor stuff. I do trips with the wife and kids, but I do need to get out more. That's
You've got to have some beer racks within Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, okay. Places to eat. Like there's a lot of solid places to eat. Our friends at La Tai, that's a solid spot downtown. Trying to think, Thai food is, you got to eat Lotus of Siam. Like if you guys ever make it down, like there's several locations that they have, but that is like that Thai food was voted the best Northern Thai food outside of Thailand. So
nice.
Yeah, it's a very, very good restaurant. Highly recommend that. But no, as for, around town, like what, you want to know watering holes I go to?
Sure.
All right. Yeah. Silver Stamp, our friend at Silver Stamp, that. So, but they're awesome. We have friends at Cerveza, but anyone of the Beer Centric 595, like those guys are all, top notch and, good friends of ours too. So it's funny. Like I can't get out of the beer industry. Even when I'm at home, I'm just constantly going places that, revolve around what we do as work. So it is definitely a lifestyle that you choose to get into when you become a brewer. But yeah,
it definitely is. And, folks coming in are going to get to experience a little bit of your Las Vegas lifestyle in the same kind of way. But Dave, I think that's a good place to bring this to a close. Choose G&D Chillers on your next expansion or brewery startup and receive 1 free year of remote control and monitoring. Schedule a time now to meet with ProBrew at CBC booth 1783. Old Orchard is the go-to source for fruit-forward ingredients for some of the biggest names in the craft brewing landscape. Omega Yeast's Diacetyl Knockout series is comprised of 8 familiar yeast strains engineered to knock out the formation of diacetyl before it starts. ABS Commercial are proud to offer brewhouses, tanks, keg washers, and preventative maintenance parts to brewers across the country. If you're a distiller or curious about it, check out the Craft Spirits and Distilling podcast. As the global preferred supplier of NZ hops, Yakima Chief is your source for great New Zealand hops, now available in cryo. And the architects at OPA Design Studio are your partners in developing the unique design you need. If you've enjoyed this podcast or any others, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber, and help us bring great stories to you. Great podcast episodes week after week, great magazines to you quarter after quarter, whether it's Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, our Brewing Industry Guide, or our video classes, also available to all access subscribers. Dave, if people want to learn more about Big Dogs, where can they find you out there on the internet? And then if they want to taste Big Dogs beer while they're here in Las Vegas, where should people come and find you?
Well, you got to come here to our brewery, 4543 North Rancho. We're in Las Vegas. We are on the northwest side of town, but, from the Venetian, I guess where everyone's going to be at, it's about 20 minutes drive. Not too bad, but we're right off the freeway. So I highly suggest people coming out here. We're going to have a bunch of cool stuff going on, events through the week, live music, and a bunch of beer on tap. We're trying to push a lot of local Nevada beers, not just obviously our beer, but we're going to have the whole front area blocked off with about 50 beers, a good mix of Nevada and Las Vegas beers being poured out there along with ours.
Like an ongoing beer festival up here at Big Dogs.
So we have an event, I know, to add to our stress here, but we have an event. It's our Peace, Love, and Hoppiness. It's on 4/20. So if anyone is going to be here before the official CBC kickoff. We'll have an event here, a festival, and then it carries over. We'll leave all the infrastructure, all the 40 or 50 taps that we're going to have out there, everything. So, come on by, discounts for obviously CBC people. And you can try our beers here or anywhere up and down the strip, really. But yeah, that's that.
Awesome. Well, Dave, good luck in this year's competition.
Oh, gosh.
We'll see what you come back with. Hopefully, I'm going to knock on wood and not jinx it for you.
Yeah.
Maybe I have. It's the worst thing to put these podcasts out right before that competition. You're like, damn it. Wow. Why did we even say that?
Yeah, can we edit this, please?
But I'm sure you're looking forward to welcoming brewers from all around the country into Las Vegas and sharing your approach to brewing. It's been great talking to you about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media @Craft Beer Brew.